Okay, so now we're gonna drag in the model into our um, we're gonna hook up the model to this prefab, this item prefab. So um, we're basically just gonna, as I said before, all modding is you just replace Nelson's stuff with your own models and sounds and configurations. So we're gonna do exactly that. Um, Now, as I said before, this has two different models with LODs. Now, I usually don't make LODs. I mean, you might say it's bad practice, but and if you're making curated content, maybe you would probably do LODs, but it doesn't actually affect performance at all. So unless you have like a hyper realistic model, maybe. But see, I've only made one model. But if I wanted to, you can make, or if you want to, you can make like a slightly less detailed model where like you remove all of the small things that you won't be able to see from far away, like these, and just delete them and have that as your second model. But if you don't want a second model, you can just delete this model one. So I'm going to do that. You can press delete. It will. You can't delete stuff if this has been saved to a prefab. So what you do then is you press delete, press open prefab, and it's now deleted model one. So now we only have one model. Um, Cool, and now it's been updated in the scene. So another thing to notice is that we've got the secondary LOD that no longer has model one. So if we zoom out too much, then the gun will disappear. So what we want to just do here is left click on this, delete it, or you right click and then click delete, and then just move this far away, and then so that, yeah, that should work. Can do it quite far. Okay. So now we can drag in the HK33 model wherever it might be. Okay, so if you left click on this arrow here, all the components are, this is basically the objects. You never actually need any of this stuff. So and it kind of clutters your project when you're searching for things. So usually what I do and what most people do to get rid of this is when you left click on your model in the inspector window here, you go to materials and you turn material creation mode off, and then it doesn't import the materials because yeah. So these are your meshes that you'll be using. So to replace the Zubeknikov model with your own one, you just drag in your gun mesh into so if you click on model, left click on model 0, there's this mesh filter on the side. This is the mesh filter component, and it takes in a mesh as an argument. So you just replace whatever is in there with your own. There we go. Now it's got your own mesh. Okay, as you can see, the texture is wrong. So to fix that, we need to, it's got the old Zubeknikov texture on it, which we don't really want. So you can just drag your own texture onto it. So I'm gonna to do that, you can just find wherever your texture is. Mine is hk33.png, and just drag it onto model0.png. Now, very important that you notice this, but as you can see, the model is shiny, and that's because by default, it's not created in material here, we can go to it or just search for it. So our material has got smoothness set to 0.5, and that's what Unity does by default. You can probably change that in settings somewhere, but anyway. And a lot of people who don't know what they're doing when doing this sort of thing is they forget to turn this down. So their workshop guns are just shiny and they look horrible. So please remember to always turn down your material smoothness to 0.5. If you really want to, you can have metallic texture, but it really looks shit, so I would not recommend that. Okay, and that is... Oh, okay, one more thing is how do we know... Okay, there's like two more things we have to do now. So the first thing is, if you can see here, you can see the divides because the model isn't smooth. So now you can import it from Blender, but usually what you do is you just tell Unity to smooth your normals. That's the proper name for mesh. What people call is like model smoothing or mesh smoothing is a normal calculation. And so you it's like, I'm not going to get too in depth to it, but to smooth it in Unity, you can just set your normals. By default, it's import, so it's going to import whatever's in Blender. So you can do it in Blender and then import it into Unity. But I like to, and it's much simpler to just set this import here next to normals, set import to calculate, and then click apply. And you can change this right here is the smoothing angle. So if you set this to 60, it's going to smooth every angle on this mesh that's less than 60. So you can set this to, I usually set this around 30 or 45. It really depends on your model. If you have lots of tiny angles that you don't want to be smoothed, or if your angles are usually very big, you might need to increase it. But like if we set this to 5 degrees, it's not going to do anything because none of these angles are less than 5 degrees. And if you set it like to something that's too high, so I say 100 degrees, it's going to smooth like everything and it's going to look horrible. So you usually want to put this around, I think for this I'll do 35. That's how my other G3 is. And okay. Secondly, you might need to scale your model. So mine is a pretty decent scale. However, okay, so this gun is, if you don't know, it's based on a G3. It's like a G3 variant. And I've already got a G3 that I've made here. So I'm going to, okay, this is now in the wrong place, but I'm just going to reset this origin so everything is at the world origin. Okay, my G3's model is missing for some reason, but here we go. So here's my G3. As you can see, it's slightly bigger, and I don't really want that, and that's because my G3 is being scaled to 1.1. That's just how I made it originally, and my HK33 model is still scaled to 1. So I'm just going to scale this so that they're exactly the same size, because I found that, so that's just for me, really. Okay. Okay, looking good. We have a nice looking model, and we're almost done with this part. The last thing we just have to think about, and you can do this at the end as well, like of everything, but how is this gun going to spawn in your hand? Because it depends on like where the, like if the model is too high, it's going to be floating. If it's too low, it's going to be cutting into your hands, or too behind, or whatever. So to see kind of, and it also depends on your animation, like your animation file. So if you go and change that prefab, it's going to also change stuff. So typically what you do to get the hand placement right for when you hold it is just find like a similar gun to yours that's going to have the same animation, drag it into the world. Okay, so Nelson's stuff is for some reason all over the place in terms of location. So what you do is you make sure your models are on top of each other. Make sure you're in pivot mode. As you can see here, the origins are, they both at 0, 0, 0, but this is why you should never use center. So put it on pivot if you don't have it. And you just move your model so that the handle is more or less in the same place as the Zubeknikov handle, or whatever working gun you have already is handle. And then you just leave it like that. So what you can do, what I'm going to do here is, because I've already made this G3 and I want this G3 to be, I want the HK to be similar to the G3 that I have already, I'm going to make sure that the G3's, I'm going to make sure that this model is on the same place as the G3. So please make sure that they're on the same, both items need to be the same location. If they're not, it's not going to work. And I'm just going to drag this so that the handles are more or less in the same place. Cool. So that is how we're going to hold our gun, and we're going to design you can drag the hitbox by clicking on, when you click on, you can click on this thing here, and you can just drag the hitbox around the gun. Do not be a perfectionist about this, because I promise you, it's not noticeable. Yeah. And that's pretty much it. Okay, so then once we've done all of this, we need to okay, if we close Unity right now, it's going to lose all our changes. So, but if we apply it to a prefab, which is in the file, and we have that, then it's going to save. So left click on model and only model. In your inspector window, left click on overrides here, and then there's like a bunch of changes that it's showing you that have happened to your mesh and all of that and transform, and just click apply all. So now if we delete it and if we try to get our prefab again, which is in here, okay, then yeah, it's gone and saved all the changes that we made. Okay, I'm gonna stop that here, and then the next thing we're gonna do is set up like all the simple like barrel and grip and all of that sort of thing. It's gonna be quite quick.